This is Dan Nowman Niswander. You are watching The Nowman Show, cultural magazine variety show focusing on arts, entertainment, education, and news. And today my guest is Alex Gruenenfelder. Is that right?
Alex Gruenenfelder.
Alex Gruenenfelder. Okay. And Alex is running for mayor of Los Angeles. The unique part of that story, let's say to start, is that he is the youngest person to ever run for mayor of Los Angeles. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's an interesting day, but I'm glad to be here on the show and to talk a little about myself and my campaign. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Lots of things are developing as things open up a little bit, and just each day is an adventure. Would you be the youngest person ever to run for mayor?
I am. I am the youngest person in the history of the city to run for mayor of Los Angeles. And if elected, I will be the youngest mayor of a major city in American history.
Wow. That's quite, already you've accomplished a lot right there, Alex.
Why are you running for mayor?
I think for me, running for mayor was a natural continuation of the work that I've been doing in the community for a long time. I knew from time I was probably 14 years old working on my first campaign that I wanted to be involved in politics. And as I became an organizer, started working as a strategist when I was 15, founded my first community organization, Survivors Power, working to get resources to survivors of sexual violence, especially in Los Angeles schools. Did that at 16. Began organizing walkouts and protests also at 16. Graduated from my high school. I grew up going to all public schools here in Los Angeles. Graduated at 17, coming out of UC San Diego at 19, and appointed to the Echo Park Neighborhood Council at 19. So although I am young, I think my path here was really a continuation of wanting to fight for progressive leadership here in local politics. And when I began to consider a run last summer, I spoke to a lot of friends, a lot of candidates themselves, campaign managers, and I talked about where it would be most strategic for me to run. And although some people may think it's a major leap to run for mayor, there were not any true progressives running for mayor. And there's still not any true progressives who plan on running. So I'm running to give the progressive movement a voice. And whether we win or lose, we get our ideas out there and we can change the conversation.
Absolutely. That is the top priority, but even though we want to win, of course, I think at the end of the day, progressive agenda is the most popular. That's my takeaway, especially in the last 5 years.
What is your platform?
My platform, and to sort of refer to that idea you were just talking about the expansion of progressive policies in America, I think progressivism is popular, and that's what my platform's about. My platform, I often say, is about three things, three big goals, but goals that we need here in Los Angeles. It's about ending homelessness, it's about reforming the police, and it's about stopping corporate welfare. And these are issues that are on Angelino's minds, and especially that ending homelessness issue, doing so in a compassionate way by moving through all the steps from taking what we have right now, a situation of largely street homelessness, which is the most dangerous, moving to safe campgrounds, then to bridge housing, like the tiny home properties. I've spoken to people building those. Then focusing on resources, whether they be mental health care, drug and alcohol addiction services, getting people jobs, and then moving them into permanent supportive housing, and pairing all of that with the policies we know can prevent homelessness, not just those investments in stopping addiction and helping with healthcare, but also making investments for rent stabilization, for making sure that the cost of living stays low. Because I believe that these issues, but especially ending homelessness, shows people that the progressive solutions aren't just the ones that sound compassionate. They're not only the ones that sound good in theory, but they're the truly data-driven solutions that are going to get the job done here in Los Angeles. And so my platform is about the idea of taking my progressive values, the values most of us here in Los Angeles hold, and applying them so that we can have a more just and equitable society and drive that based on facts. So we're going to end homelessness. We're going to reform the police by reallocating more funds towards social services and trying to get rid of the roots of crime rather than just fighting the symptoms. And we're going to stop corporate welfare, because not only is corporate welfare in the city unjust, giving money to big developers, building hotels and stadiums, but it's also a waste of our money. And when a lot of Angelenos are worried about their tax burden, when they think about where to raise their families, we shouldn't, because we don't need to keep raising taxes on everyday working people. We can keep tax rates the same if we get rid of corporate welfare and start putting that money toward policies like ending homelessness and reforming the police. That is the sensible, fact-based thing to do. And that's what my platform's all about. You can find out way more about my platform at mayoralex.com. We got information there about my criminal justice reform policies, a bit about how I want to tackle COVID-19. And by the end of this year, we're going to have full, fleshed out, detailed policies as well about how we're going to deal with climate change as a city and how we're going to deal with public transit. All of that's going to be fleshed out. I'm talking to a lot of experts right now to make sure that facts and data are really what's driving our policies.
Exactly, because there's a lot of information out there that, well, we've heard the term fake news, but that's why we have to be on our toes and realize, who are the sources of the information as well as the information that we're getting. To your point, it's more corporate welfare. It doesn't work for the vast majority of people. It looks to me people like you are a tremendous inspiration for all of us to realize, that we have to make some radical changes.
How much more in taxes should multimillionaires and billionaires now be paying?
I think my big point is that a lot of the way in which we can cut unnecessary funding does not require increases in taxes. But there is one big kind of tax that does not affect everyday working people at all, that I'm the only candidate in the race to be proposing, and that's a vacancy tax. At the moment, we have a system built here in Los Angeles that is built by and for landlords. We got a number of landlords on the city council, and we have a city council that votes for landlords' interests. A vacancy tax, as tried in Vancouver, as tried in cities around the world, is a pretty basic premise. It's the idea that you cannot hold a dramatic amount of land in the middle of a major city and not use it and not rent it out. And I don't even feel this way necessarily about, do you have 2 homes? But I'm talking about the people who own 3 properties, an apartment building. And if you're intentionally creating scarcity, that's something we should absolutely be taxing. And it's part of my homelessness plan to do it. Now, council members like Councilmember Rahman, Councilmember Bonin have touched on this issue, but it's not a policy that's ever really going to be spearheaded in the city council because of the fact that landlords are dominant there. From my perspective, a vacancy tax is the most important kind of tax we as a city need to be looking at right now, because when we need more money for homelessness, we raised the sales tax. And the sales tax isn't affecting the top 1% for the most part. They don't care as much. It's everyday working people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a vacancy tax on these large luxury units downtown, which are sitting vacant, is necessary. A vacancy tax that adjusts, a vacancy tax that applies to hotels that rent out under 50% of their units a month. And that's not to say that the city is just trying to rake in money on this plan, but we have the beds here in Los Angeles. We don't have the beds that we have access to end homelessness, but we have the total number of beds. And with a vacancy tax, we can have extra revenue that we can spend on ending homelessness. And it will be an incentive system to guarantee that, a downtown luxury unit, if someone owns 3 downtown luxury condos and they're keeping them as an investment for real estate purposes, that's ridiculous. And with a vacancy tax, they're either going to be shelling out a few $1,000s a year that we can put toward homelessness, or they're going to go, we're going to cut that rent until we can find someone who actually we're going to be able to rent it out to. And I think as a progressive, as a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, there are folks who sometimes get confused by this basic system. But really, all we're talking about is supply and demand. This is simple economics here. If people are incentivized, they will do it. And so we're creating an incentive, and we're creating a way that we can make money to pay for homelessness initiatives in a way that doesn't affect everyday working people. So when we talk about the tax burden in general, and in general, I feel strongly that working people are overtaxed while the rich are undertaxed. I think the vacancy tax should be paramount to the work we're doing here in Los Angeles.
What do you think about opening up options such as ivermectin for treatments as well as prophylaxis of COVID-19 and variants going forward?
I think overall, we need to open the conversation more and bring more people in when it comes to events surrounding COVID-19 and medicine in general. Because I feel that in the case of this pandemic, there were a lot of people who were confused as to a lot of what was going on, a lot of the reason for lockdowns. And it felt like there were, at the state level, at the city level, at the federal level, there were dramatically different messages being sent. And I believe a lot of the damage wrought by the pandemic was a result of that. And now, as we begin to come out of the pandemic, with the march toward herd immunity, and I'm lucky to be fully vaccinated, and I think that there are a lot of initiatives going on to get shots in arms, but also to get medical treatment generally. I think all of this highlights the need, one, for universal health care. I'm a strong advocate for Medicare for All, and I support our city working to get more health care to people. But I also think it highlights the need for medical education, because people are far apart often from those who are making public health policy. Here in Los Angeles, the public health advice we largely get is from the county public health director, which is an unelected position and currently occupied by someone who is not a doctor.
Really?
In a medical sense, has a PhD, but not a doctor, not a medical doctor.
Really?
And I don't even mean that in a disrespectful way. She has made decisions I agree with, decisions I disagree with. But when there's this gap, when one could argue that public health professionals are being put into political situations, I think that's a problem. And I think that during the pandemic, we've seen that a lot. And, I have doctors in my family, I have scientists in my family, I know a lot of doctors and scientists, and a lot of the information I got during the pandemic, a lot of the way that I felt that I could have reliable information about safety was because of people I happen to know. And that is not the way that public health information should be disseminated, especially because it does not look like pandemics are going away in our lifetime. It is very possible that another one will hit Los Angeles. And as mayor, I'm going to work to make sure that the public is well educated about medicine generally and about the risks of pandemics, and that we can work to prepare for this in advance so that if tragically we do see another epidemic, pandemic disease, then we are prepared and we don't go into the crisis situation that we had to go through last year.
That's great, because I think a lot of it has to do with education and information, and that creates empowerment, and that's empowerment is what forces the certain people in society anyway to start making demands, because obviously the way this was handled was just a mixed bag, right? And you're right, it was extraordinarily politicized. There are no studies of long-term effects, good and bad, of any of these brand new vaccines, because we are probably not seeing the end of these pandemics. After all, COVID-19 is called 19 because it was not the very first coronavirus. You mentioned Medicare for All, too. I personally believe we could have saved a lot of people's lives.
Regarding climate change, what are your policies for Los Angeles in green energy, the economy, and public transportation?
I think that's a great question. I also think an example I want to give about climate change, because I think a lot of people think of climate action as being uh, this loss leader activity, where even if it pays off long term, you're gonna lose a lot in the meantime. But I think about there's a small city in Texas, deep red city in the biggest oil state in the nation, and was one of the first cities in America to get on track to go 100% renewable. And people were shocked. And the mayor of the city, even though he was a staunch Republican, said, well, this is what's going to bring jobs to my community. And, it's going to pay off in the long run. And I think when it comes to green energy, even for those who might not think climate change is an immediate pressing priority, it's going to save us money. It's going to build jobs. And importantly, even if you don't believe in climate change, resources are finite and we shouldn't use them all up, because then there will be none left and we won't have prepared. So
right.
Climate change is an important idea. My first priority is we need to really fast track getting our city on a 100% renewable grid. And we can start that by showing as an example the city buildings. City Hall should be 100% renewable. The mayor's mansion should be 100% renewable. There should be solar panels on top of the mayor's mansion. These are the kinds of things that we can do immediately, and they're things that can be executed largely by executive action. Similarly, we need to work to get city contractors who we have direct control over because they contract with us. We need to get those private businesses to adopt renewable technologies. That's what we need to do. And we need to work to get our system of transit, public transit, on a renewable grid. Because I think we need to, one, start making our buses and trains fully electric. But as long as we have a grid that is powered by oil, we're still going to be contributing badly to climate change. So we need to start getting our grid renewable. And then we can begin to make more and more things electric. And these are all just things that are owned by the city, things that we have direct control over. And something I would do day one as mayor is to sign into law a revoking of the permits that we have given for people to drill in working class areas of the city. There are a lot of people who see oil drilling as being some far off thing done in small desert towns. But we're seeing people who are drilling largely in Black and brown communities right here in the city of Los Angeles.
West Adams.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would act immediately to end drilling in Los Angeles, and then overall to work to get the city on a 100% renewable grid. I'm speaking with a lot of climate experts right now who we are talking about specifics of policy, specifics of how we can enact our own version of the Green New Deal that can create jobs and that can build our economy in a green, renewable way. But for now, what I can say for sure is I'm going to stop drilling in the city, and I'm going to start getting our city on a 100% renewable grid. And that starts by holding our city and our city's contractors accountable to clean and green energy. And part of it is, it doesn't cost tax dollars to shut down people drilling for oil. But some would say that that is going to take away some of the city's tax revenue. So I think part of this comes down to, I would support and would consider and look into a tax specifically affecting non-sustainable development in the city to encourage all of our buildings that are built to be sustainable. And if we create a clean, green economy that creates jobs, then we have more people living here and more people paying taxes. And that's basic economics. And alongside that, I will work to get Los Angeles federal investment. The Biden administration is being quite generous to a lot of cities in giving out money. And the city of Los Angeles is taking almost none of it. And there's no real reason for why we're not. We're seeing trillions of dollars about to be invested into American infrastructure. And yet When the Biden administration has said, we'll reimburse all costs of Los Angeles's private Project Roomkey, which for those of you who don't know, Project Roomkey is a program we have to allow unhoused people to live temporarily in hotel rooms. The Biden administration has said they will foot the bill for it. The city of Los Angeles has not only failed to expand Project Roomkey, but we haven't taken the federal government's money. And this is just basic. We as a state give more money out to the federal government than we take in. Yeah. We are subsidizing smaller states, largely red states, that oppose welfare policies, but our state of California is subsidizing them. So what we need to do is we need to take that federal investment. We need to bring that back here so we can fund clean and green energy in the city. And I believe that my plans are going to create enough jobs and bring enough people back to LA and allow for enough sustainable development downtown, especially, that we're going to have enough lodging for these people to actually live so they can build lives and families here. And that's how we're going to have the money to do it. It's really just about what are we subsidizing as a city? And if we're subsidizing green energy, if we're subsidizing affordable housing, those are the kinds of things that are going to create jobs. Those are going to build livelihoods. They're going to build money from the working class and the middle class. And although for a long time, many people were pitched this idea of trickle-down economics, that if you give money to the ultra-wealthy, it'll trickle down to everyone else. We know that's not true because they sit on their money, they hoard their money, they put it into the stock market.
That's right.
When working people have more money, that's money that goes right back into the economy and stimulates everything we do as a city. So when we get more money back into the pockets of everyday working people, when we build jobs, good union jobs that allow people to have strong livelihoods here in the city, that's money that's coming right back into the economy to continue to strengthen our city.
Absolutely. There's some new developments happening with our current mayor in Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti. Can you tell us about that breaking story?
Absolutely. So this is breaking news right now that Eric Garcetti, our current incumbent mayor, is being nominated to be the United States ambassador to India by President Biden. This was speculated for many months, but it's now something that's possibly going to happen. Senate confirmation will likely take a number of months. Now, the really groundbreaking part of this isn't the idea of one career politician working his way up to a new seat. It's about what happens to us in this mayoral election. No mayor has vacated the mayor's office, voluntarily or not, in more than 100 years. It's been a very long time. The systems are not totally in place. Now, in the event that Garcetti is appointed, Council President Nury Martinez will become the acting mayor. From there, the city can either do nothing, leaving Martinez as acting mayor, or they can call for a special election, or they can appoint a mayor themselves as the city council. These are developments that to us, as a progressive grassroots campaign, matters. What I can say is this: if Garcetti leaves, if Garcetti doesn't get appointed, doesn't matter to us. If there's a special election, we'll be on the ballot in it. And if there's not, we will run against whoever is appointed the council president. The city council has failed to address homelessness. They have failed to address police reform. There are only a few folks on the council who I can honestly say are trying in favor of progressive reforms. So I've had my phone blowing up for the past hour or so of people asking me, what are you going to do? Are you still running? Of course we're still running. We're still in this. And by next December, we're going to be at City Hall implementing our policies.
What are your final thoughts?
Thank you again for having me on the show. I'm really glad to be here and use this to platform my campaign. My closing thoughts are really to ask the folks in the audience who I think a lot of whom are probably progressive. But regardless, If you are a person who is driven by the idea that leadership should be driven by facts and not politics, I hope you'll check out my platform. If you believe that compassionate, reasonable solutions aren't just the ones that sound good in theory, but the ones that can be implemented in practice, check out our campaign. If you think that young leadership isn't a problem, but the solution, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Mayor Alex LA. And if you are in the position to donate at mayoralex.com. And regardless, you can sign up to volunteer at mayoralex.com as well. What we are doing, the work we're doing, isn't just about me. It's not just about this one campaign. It's about the future of our city. And under Mayor Garcetti, we have seen homelessness increase by 80%. If we don't do something now, it's going to get even worse. It's always been my belief in politics that things get better because they have to. Eventually, there's a breaking point and working people stand up and demand change. It's time we stand up and demand change for Los Angeles, because it's time. We can change this city for the better. We can only do it together. At Mayor Alex LA, mayoralex.com. Thanks so much for having me on the show today. I'm really glad to be here and to have been able to share my campaign message with you and with your viewers.
I thank you so much for coming on the program, Alex. I really appreciate it. And on the lighter side, I have a little fun question for you so people can know a little bit about you. I know that you graduated from UC San Diego in the theater program, correct?
Yes.
Do you have a favorite play or musical?
I have an answer for both. My favorite play, there might be two here. My favorite plays are The Boys in the Band, which I saw on Broadway and thought was an amazing production, and A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare, which is just a fantastic classic play. I played Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream in high school. I'm a big fan of that show. As for musicals, I've seen a lot of musicals. Green Day's American Idiot is my favorite musical. It's an example of how theater can be fun and impactful and also political. And I'm a big fan of that show. So yeah, that's a good three. Boys in the Band, Midsummer Night's Dream, American Idiot.
I love it. Now you make me want to see American Idiot, because I do like Green Day a lot, especially that particular album. Again, thank you so much, Alex. And you're watching the Nowman Show. Always stay present in the moment now.